Okay, we're good. Take it, it's easier. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Melanie Garson. I'm the Cyber Policy Leader at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change and an Associate Professor at UCL London. And I'm delighted to be your moderator for what we have as a really interesting and exciting afternoon, bringing together practitioners and academics and government to think about scaling up cyber capacity building, and particularly the sectoral approach to critical infrastructure protection. So we're in for a really interesting, excellent afternoon of panels. To kick that off is our very special guest to give a welcome and introduction, and says his apologies because he's got to dive out very early, but I'd like to invite Aviram Atzaba, Executive Director for Strategy and International Cooperation at the INCD. So Aviram, the stage is yours.
Where should I stand? That's the question. Because if I stand behind this, you will not see me. Okay? Okay. Now it's better. Excellent. So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. This is a hectic week for us in INCD, and hectic in the best sense possible. Hi, Roy. Because, first of all, it's a festivity of cybersecurity in Israel for the industry, for the government, for the academy, of course, and for the military, which are part of our ecosystem, a very important part of our ecosystem. And, of course, for our international guests and partners that are coming here. I haven't been to any conference lecture yet. This is my first one because all of it is meetings with colleagues and partners to find areas of mutual interest and to promote our cybersecurity and their cybersecurity. So a lot of meetings with governments, but also with industry, which are part of the puzzle of building cybersecurity for a nation. In those few minutes, and I apologize again for being needing to leave after that, I will concentrate on the sectoral word of this title because I think it's interesting. It's not trivial. In many countries, we have the central government, like ourselves, like CISA in the USA or like NCSC in the UK, that are the entity responsible for cybersecurity of the nation. And of course, we have each organization dealing with his own daily need for risk management, for cybersecuring his organization, for putting in place the controls, for mitigating the attacks. And usually, in many countries, this is the situation. And in many countries, not all of them, and not every sector this is relevant, as we spoke before, but in many of them, there is a missing link. And the missing link is the one that sits between the federal, and I would consider ourselves as federal government, and the organization. And you can break it in many different ways, not many, a few different ways. For example, states. The United States is composed of states. I've been to Brazil a week ago, and Brazil is composed of states. And you can break it like this, and then the state gets roles and responsibilities for cybersecurity. And interaction between it and the federal and him and the marketplace that is part of his state. In Israel, this is less important. We are small. But we have sectors. And in many countries, sectors are also a very important part of the economy. Sectors meaning one person who is responsible for the business continuity of a portion of the economy. Energy sector, in Israel, the Ministry of Energy is responsible to making sure that our constituents, the citizens of Israel, have energy supply. And if they don't have energy supply, somebody has to do something with it. And if he doesn't have energy supply because of cybersecurity, who is responsible? So our answer in Israel is Minister of Energy is responsible. Answering it is not enough because now he needs new capabilities and tools and manpower and methodologies and engagement with the market to make it happen. And this is the place that the sectoral approach is so important. In Israel, this is a key component of us, INCD, the national level, reaching the marketplace. We, as INCD, are regulators for very small quantity of organizations, 40, 50 organizations. But we are reaching all the market. We are not the regulators of hospitals, but we are reaching the hospitals. We are not the regulators of the banks, but we are reaching the banks. We are doing it through the regulator. But the regulator in the health, Minister of Health, do not understand cybersecurity. So we made sure that he will have cybersecurity personnel within the regulator. We work with them. They help the regulator regulate the hospitals. So this model is something that we are implementing in a very good outcome in Israel. Another thing a regulator needs is eyes to see what is happening in his cyber realm. And for that, each regulator have his own SOC. SOC for energy, and SOC for finance, and SOC for health, and SOC for environmental protection, and SOC for the government. Each one has his own SOC. Those SOCs were constructed, many of them, in a joint venture between INCD and the regulator. They belong to the regulator, but we help them man them, we help them operate them, and many of those SOCs are co-located in Beersheba near our national CERT. So we are sharing with them intel information, and we are receiving from them the situation awareness so we can build the national situation awareness. So it's a joint work between us and the different sectors. Not every regulator has the legal capacity to do whatever he needs in the cyber realm, because they were constructed before, the laws for each regulator were constructed before cyber was here. So we are helping as the national government to put a law that augments their capability to deal with all the cyber issues. This is something that is work in progress right now. Last but not least, capacity building. We understood that in order for us to understand what is the situation of each sector, we need some kind of tool to assess a sector from the sectorial perspective, not from the organization perspective and not from the national perspective. Those metrics exist. There are few metrics that says how cybersecurity and how good is Togo in cybersecurity. And there are few metrics that says how good is an organization. But how good is a sector? To put the picture for the minister, to compare him to other sectors around the world in his line of business. This is something that we felt that is needed, and we are very happy that this is something that was built in a joint venture between Tel Aviv University and the World Bank, and this is a very good tool to assess the situation of a sector, but it is also a very practical tool because it helps you raise from where you are now to where you want to be in a gradual manner, according to the budget you have, according to the risk you have. So it's a very practical method, and that's why we think it's a very good one. Finalizing my word, because I can speak a lot. I'm very happy that you are here to deal with this specific issue. I think it's a very important issue, and this is something that we all should build in a spiral way. Start small and increase capabilities until we have the right capabilities we have. Start with the 80-20, you know, 20% of the budget to get 80% of the outcome. And I think that World Bank in that sense can help a lot with and Tel Aviv University with this kind of methodology, which is very practical. So thank you very much, and hi Amit.
Thank you very much, everyone, and we're sorry you have to leave. So, because we had to accommodate a very quick time frame, just to let you know a little bit of how your afternoon is going to go. So your roadmap. We've got we're going to get a little bit more detailed into this sectoral approach for critical infrastructure protection. We're then going to move to have a conversation about how that integrates with capacity building. And then we're going to switch to the other side and look at where does the private sector sit in all this. So, have you got your seatbelts fastened? I'd like to invite, for the first part of the presentation on the sectoral approach, Haggai Mezahav. He's the Senior Cybersecurity Specialist at the World Bank Digital Development Practice, and he's focused on promoting the Cybersecurity Global Initiative, working collaboratively across all sectors and regions, and addressing the World Bank clients' growing demand. So I think he's known to many of you here today. Haggai, please join us on the stage.
So, hi everyone, good afternoon. Let me just do that. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 1, 2? Yeah. You know, I hate to stand, so I will have to go. It's okay, I'm just crossing here. Okay, let's find this. You know, so we do everything here. Let's see. No, just. Sorry?
I could do your next slide, please, if you're all the way over there.
It's okay. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Okay. And you know, it's a really exciting moment for us at the World Bank because we are working for the last, I would say, couple of years together with Tel Aviv University and many other colleagues here in the room on this unique and innovative approach. And I'll give you a few more details about this approach in a moment. But before that, so yes, I'm an Israeli, so I can tell you that everything in Israel is divided into 3. Also, what we do in the World Bank is divided into 3. Our main approach for, helping countries in building their cybersecurity capacity. We do operations, knowledge sharing, and partnerships. I'll start with partnerships. This is what we're doing here, right? Sharing information between partners, working together, trying to build together some response to the needs of developing countries. Operation is actually the actual projects we have with countries. So if we have a project in Togo, for example, so this will be what we call operations. And then we have a very important part, which is knowledge. And knowledge, let me just go to the next one. Thanks. So knowledge is building the data, the frameworks, research, building all the information needed in order to support the foundation for the work we do in every single theme that we're working on, cybersecurity as well. And one of the things that we are, in a way, collecting and developing within the framework of knowledge is frameworks and cybersecurity assessment frameworks as well. And we have 2 questions we want to ask ourselves. The first question is, why do we need cybersecurity assessment framework? Well, you have the answer here. Okay, we need to enable decision makers, policy makers in every country to make decisions based on sound analysis of the situation, whether it's a national level situation, whether it's organization or sector. So this is the first question. I think we all agree. And then we come into the second one. Why do we need cybersecurity assessment framework for the critical infrastructure protection? Okay, what is so unique? Let's do some math. Okay, I know, afternoon is a great time for math, right? So we know that there is a rapid digitization of critical infrastructures. By the way, mainly in developing countries, there is a big, race to digitize everything. And when we're doing that, obviously, okay, we are exposing ourselves to more risk and vulnerabilities, connecting legacy systems to existing, to new systems, to networks, etc. That cause more exposure of these sectors. And then the end game is current low cyber maturity and resilience. On the other side, okay, when we have a rapid digitization, we are strengthening the security and resilience of cyberspace only if we, in order to achieve a sustainable economic growth. So if you look on this thing, you understand that in order to get to the final, I would say, the final goal here, the final objective here, we need to have all of this. So we need to have cybersecurity, we need to have secured networks. This is, in a way, the way we think. And then let's have a very quick look on what we have exist. existing today. What tools are available? What frameworks are available? I'm not going to dive into them. We have national level frameworks. For example, the Oxford SCMM, very widely used by the World Bank as well. And there are other frameworks you can see here. One of them, I need to do some PR for the World Bank. So one of them is the Combating Cybercrime, is a national level cybercrime framework. Google it. It's only 130 pages. Okay, good luck. No, but this is a national level frameworks. Of course, we have, I mean, out of the shelf, you can go to the supermarket and find thousands of frameworks for, enterprise level, operator level cybersecurity frameworks. Of course, this one is one of the most famous one. And then we have sector-specific cybersecurity frameworks. Again, PR for the World Bank. We developed like 2 years ago together with the IAPH, which is the Ports and Ports Facilities International Organization, guidelines for cybersecurity for this subsector. There are cybersecurity frameworks for the financial sector, etc. But what is missing? Sector-agnostic cybersecurity framework, something we can deploy, apply to all critical sectors, regardless, to the sector itself, and then make some modification, customization to the actual sector in place. But before that, what is a sector or subsector? Okay, so a sector, when we come to to kind of like discuss sector is a group of organizations that at the end deliver the same specific activities. They have. Think about the family. They have like a father or a mother at the top of the family, which kind of like guide them how to work. And this is a responsible authority that the sector has. So the sector does not have to be only the energy sector. It could be the electricity sector. It could be the aviation sector. It could be any subsector you can think of. And this is important because this makes these methodologies that we're going to present in a second much more feasible and usable, because we can really apply it to almost everything, especially when we talk about projects of developing banks, the World Bank, other developing banks. Usually project won't be on a sector, but will be on a subsector. So this is why it's very important, it's very applicable. What is unique, as far as we see it in the bank, what is unique? Why do we need a specific attention to critical sectors? Obviously, the first thing is the fact that we need to continue to deliver essential services to the population, right? This is obvious. But then we see increasingly interdependence within sectors, especially when the digitization is coming in. So you must have a look on a sector as a sector. You cannot only take care of a critical system, because all is connected. So we have to have an holistic view of it. Then, of course, we have the cascading effect of cyber incident across sector. When we talk about the country, countries are connected, right? I mean, cybersecurity is no border, but still a country is a very solid entity. When we talk about the sector, you don't have a sector in a country that is not interlinked, interconnected to other sectors. Think about the telecommunication sector, for example. There is no ISP, there's no internet, okay? I mean, there is no functioning of anything. Electricity sector as well. Even the transportation, people won't be able to get to work. Maybe we can live without schools for a day, right? I guess, I mean, some people will agree with that if we talk about the education, but most of these sectors are very critical. And the last thing that we need to take into consideration is the fact that in most of the sector we have international standards. Think about the SWIFT, for example, in the financial sector. And we need to stand to those international standards. So taking in mind all of this, in the bank we thought about what we need. We came up with this thing. I mean, you can read it, but I think I mentioned most of this. It has to be holistic. We need a framework that will provide decision makers the ability to take decision based on analysis. But the last one is what I wanted to focus. We wanted to create a framework that at the end of the day won't produce only a paper, okay, with recommendations. It has to be linked to actual practical development, critical infrastructure, projects, activities, so we can inform them, and next step will be actual practical improvements to the sector. So I really wanted to say, guys, I mean, I'm so proud to give you this, and just click on this and see our methodology, but it will be only on Friday. Why? It's processes in the World Bank. So on Friday, you'll be able to find this methodology live on the World Bank, just click World Bank Digital Development, and you'll find, I think it's recently added, okay? You will find it, or just click SCMM in this page. And you're going to be able to download, you're going to be able to read the first version of this SCMM. The SCMM is a World Bank product that is based on Tel Aviv University progress methodology. And this is, again, the place to thank Tel Aviv University for the great collaboration during the last, couple of years, from the day we started until we have this methodology ready. So again, I want to kind of like encourage you, drive some traffic to our website. So, okay, everybody has a website. It will be on the last slide as well. The SCMM is a methodology that systematically collect information about the sector. I'll show you very quickly the structure in a second. It's examined a sector as a system. And you'll see in a second that we are not only focusing on the sector, but all the things around the sector. So it's capture the sector as a system, analyzing the current gaps. Okay, something happened, and provide at the end of the day actionable recommendations, but tailored recommendations to what, and I think Aviram said that before. So we are not trying to achieve the ideal situation. Okay, if we have a country, we're not trying to say, okay, this is what Israel is doing, this is what the US is doing, this is what you need to do, guys. Through an iterative a process of discussions with the client, we are understanding what is a desirable, feasible objectives of or ideal future situation of the client, and this is what we are trying to achieve. So these recommendations are driven by the desired performances, this is what I wanted to say, of the client. And the recommendations can be recommendations about policy, about actual measurements, many types of different type of recommendations. So the methodology. The methodology, and I'm not going to get into this. I mean, this slide is meant to show you that we have a fixed, thorough methodology that can be rolled out over and over again. It's a systematic one, and it's a repeatable one that you can do. We can do it once, do it after, etc. It's very structured, and remember on Friday we'll be able to click on the link and see the methodology. I just want to focus on the layer of assessment because this is very important. So the layer of assessment is the upper layer of this methodology, and the layer of assessment has 3 layers. Obviously, these 2 layers are the actual sector. So you have the sector regulator, usually the ministry of some kind of a sectoral regulator or a sectoral authority. But then, and then you have the key entities of the sector. Let's take, for example, the telecommunications sector. So the key entities could be MNOs, mobile network operators, right? But key entities sometimes are very important because they are in the telecommunications sector. They could be, a multinational organization like Orange, like AT&T, right? So they are very important factors of the methodology itself. But key entities are also other local entities, organizations that are related to the functioning of the critical procedures and critical assets of the sector. But then we also look on the national sector entities. So obviously, let's take from Israel. I mean, Aviram just stood here before and said that you see I'm Israeli. Israel has sectorial SOCs, okay? But the sectorial SOCs have to talk with the national cert and the national agency. So we must take into consideration the impact that the national entities has on the sector that we are assessing. So this methodology also encompasses the national entities, but also service providers, okay? Training providers, IT service providers, supply chain, academic institutions that has influence on the sector. We are not assessing them. We are assessing the relation with them between those entities and the sector and how it affects the level of maturity of the sector. No, it's not one. No, it's not one. Yeah. Okay, it will be 2. Sorry, Leo. So, of course, I mean, we have a process. I'm not going to get into the process, obviously. What is important in this part, okay, delivery and feedback, okay? This is not a paper that we give to the client and say, okay, take it, and we leave. But this is an iterative process, receiving the feedback and modifying the results to the needs of the client. This is some nice graphics for the results, but I'm not allowed. This is the process we did. In the process we did, we had 4 pilot assessments. And the pilot assessment was mainly to get practical case studies and hands-on experience before we are finally formulating the methodology. I'll just say that it took some time to choose which pilots to do. Just on that, project feasibility, I touched on that before. This is very important. We really saw that if we are choosing sectors that there is some kind of other project available later, obviously it creates more engagement from the client side, but also on the 4 projects we did, and this is the 4 projects we did. We have Togo representatives here, so we had a project at the BCAO, and this project, by the way, then led to an audit that is being done now, or other follow-up activities within the bank. That was the first project we did, but we had projects in all of these countries, and there is a follow-up, existing follow-up that is being done now with the different clients. I will jump on that. This is the key takeaways. You can have a quick look on that. But I would say that the most important thing at the end of the day, and this is some testimonials. So we had last week a presentation of this at the World Bank with some of our clients and stakeholders and partners, and we are very delighted to see that they liked it and they really saw that this methodology that was already tested in those 4 countries was valuable for them and beneficial for them. I'll stop here. I know that we have, just to say that moving forward, sorry. Moving forward, we are continuing in the process of, refining the methodology. So this is the version 1 of the methodology. We're going to continue piloting it. Everyone are welcome when it's going to be a public good. Friday, remember, you're more than welcome to log into and see this methodology. We want to continue to refine it. And we're going to have future pilots. So this is the process moving forward. Thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you for all the partners for the great collaboration. Thank you for the time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I should have music like at the Oscars so I can start to play. So thank you, Haggai. As Haggai mentioned, this project comes in collaboration with Tel Aviv University and particularly with the ICRC. So I'd like to invite Dr. Lior Tavansky, head of the Cyber Research Development here at the Blavatnik ICRC, who's really spent time working on the impacts of cyber insecurity, has the honor of having co-authored with Professor Yitzhak Ben Israel's comprehensive insider account of decades of insider policy and operations, and now the sectoral approach. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie. I'll grab the mic soon.
You have to put it around your neck.
Is it on?
No, you're loud enough.
Loud enough.
You could put the silver bit at the front, and there's a button on the machine.
Oh, the machine.
Yeah, there's on the top.
Okay. No. Now it's better. Yes, no, yes. Okay. Thank you. So, first of all, I'm very glad that we are at this milestone when the work that started several years ago in a way that is quite common perhaps in Israel but not so common elsewhere. Other places call it public-private partnership. For us it becomes sort of more natural, where the government and the universities and the private sector cooperate for things that are of interest to all parties. and eventually also help or aspire to help our partners in different communities. So for me, it was a great opportunity to get to know the international development field. And I'm sure that this is just the beginning of the work and not only the end of this project. So I want to talk about, to take a, let's say, a bit more higher or academic or scientific view on the topic, why the sectoral approach, why do we need it, and where can we use it. Now, as we all know, anywhere, the digital infrastructure, the digital technologies, computing are underpinning more and more functions, practically everything that we do, despite the fact that almost all cybersecurity industry is targeting the developed world. In the developing countries, the need for cybersecurity also exists. The technical environment sometimes is also very different. So these are challenges, not only large challenges, but it's something that you cannot just solve by copying and pasting approaches from the developed world. By the way, listening to the conference, and you don't need the conference to know that, in the developed world, the cybersecurity situation also is not so bright. So it's not sure that we are doing the right things anyway. Now, then we need scientific approaches or science, or bring different disciplines to understand and analyze the situation. And this is what we have been doing, and then developed it into a more applied and applicable work. Any complex social technical system sounds like a strong word, but any social activity or complex activity can be analyzed as a system. And there is the entire science of systems. If we take a look at modern life, at a city in this case, it can be modeled by its functions, and every function can be modeled by the components and systems that underpin it. And as we all know, more and more of these systems are built on data, information, and industrial control systems, and cyber-physical systems, and so on. Now, what does it mean? First of all, that you can analyze problems with scientific tools, and not only with, let's say, a hunch. Now, a sector, as Haggai said, a sector is a coordinated group of organizations that deliver a particular service. Here, too, we can define the service. We can look up the organizational charts. We can look up the legislations. And we also can look up and analyze how, in fact, things are being produced and delivered on the ground. Quite often, as anywhere else in reality, the organizational charts and the actual production are not entirely the same, so this also helps. Any of this data can be modeled, again, with the approach of the science of complex systems and networks. Now, network science is a relatively new field. The interesting part, or perhaps the main innovation of network science, is that some properties of the system or of the phenomena that you explore derive from a network structure. So it can be mass transit, it can be financial transactions, it can be a dating app, it can be agricultural application. All of this, it turns out, the network structures has a direct influence on how these things operate. Here I just show a slide from a lecture by Albert Laszlo Barabashi, perhaps the most prominent, well-known scientist of networks. His work in this exhibition is about the visualization, visual representations of networks and relations between different components, how it evolved through his work today, from the beginning today. You can see that the beginning of visualization is 2000s, but the science of this started not much before, in the 90s. This is a huge scientific discovery. You don't have to take my word for it. You can check it yourself. With applications, first and foremost in cybersecurity, anomaly detection analysis, anti-malware, all sorts of applications to identify and prioritize which parts of the process need stronger protection and additional investments, counterterrorism, and so and so. In many more and more fields, we can identify the uses of network science. In biological sciences too, links between different phenomena that don't seem related, genes and so on. Now, this is a powerful tool if we have enough data. In cybersecurity, where we have sufficient technological sensors, we collect this data and can then use it. But on the higher properties, such as how a sector operates, it's also important because it helps you to uncover the crucial points of potential failure in the network. In the network, not the computer network, but how the service is being produced and delivered. This is, of course, vital to understand and then to design a well-informed policy and allocate resources properly, in this case for the resilience of the service, including cybersecurity. Now, second fundamental discovery of the science of complex history is that resilience is not a linear function of robustness of the components. So let's say we have a network of banking institutions. If each bank becomes more and more protected, better defended with higher walls, it doesn't directly translate into resilience. Resilience is a function of interaction between different components and not just of building stronger and stronger defenses or security for each of the components. Also has direct implications for policy. In many, there's a whole market niche in cybersecurity trying to quantify the potential outcomes and impacts of breaches in order to inform where we can allow ourselves to spend to spend less on security and which are the critical parts that we need to form. And doing a uniform approach or a cookie cutter approach is not the right way to do it. It may look good for compliance, it may look good for standards, but it doesn't serve resilience well. In a way, it's a waste of resources, which instead could be better used focusing on the main and the most important elements, which you can identify with the network analysis. Now, this science and this scientific approach was one part of the topics that informed the work that Hagai presented and the application that we developed for the World Bank, the Sectoral Cybersecurity Maturity Model. The other part is also, as previously mentioned by Avera Matsaba, is the operational and empirical experience accumulated in the State of Israel during critical infrastructure protection operations for more than 2 decades. What are the use cases of the sectoral approach? We think that there are more than one. Yeah? First of all, for countries that still are in the process of developing a national approach to critical infrastructure protection, it can inform a better process. What we see in many places, and it's also reflected in the modern literature, and it's also not surprising if you study organizational behavior, that a new organization is relatively easy to erect, establish and provide it with some legal foundations. But then, as soon as it starts growing and actually try to do things, then it encounters a different friction with existing organizations. If we start the process with a sectoral approach in parallel with the national need for national legislation, budget allocation, roles and responsibilities, there will be much less chance of stumbling at the same obstacles that other countries have been stumbling on, and streamlining and aligning the different legitimate interests between different stakeholders Such as an example that Veram Atzaber again presented. You have a Ministry of Health that might be somehow responsible for cybersecurity, but it isn't. It is responsible for delivery of the healthcare services to some extent. It doesn't have, and it shouldn't have, all the capability to do cybersecurity. It should cooperate, at least with the national level. And these are the things that become complicated when you have different organizations with not very well-aligned interests. So to set up a national critical infrastructure protection policy, a sectoral approach is important. It will result in a more holistic, prioritized, and comprehensive architecture and set the strong foundations. Now, the work that we did together with the World Bank is to boost the resilience of a development project. We think that cybersecurity is not a vertical, or not only a vertical, so to speak, but it's a foundational enabler of any sustainable development. In particular, infrastructure projects, energy, finance, healthcare, transportation, telecommunication, you name it, which include physical but also digital components. So this is the use case, the main use case for which the World Bank is now providing the methodology that is developed, piloted, tested as a free tool to use. And we will continue working on this both in the university and with our partners, existing and hopefully future partners, who will help us inform and develop this work. It will certainly help better manage the risk of the investments of multilateral development banks. We have representatives here from 3 such organizations. These are incredibly important organizations with massive influence of the sustainable development. The third and the last for this presentation use case is to operationalize national cybersecurity. We have seen both separately in our individual work as the university and another capacity in different countries, but also in the work of the World Bank. We have situations where organizations and role and responsibilities have already been established after a long, thoughtful process and deliberation. You have already a national organization for cybersecurity and infrastructure protection, but the operationalization of the capabilities is work that will take several years. Here too, the national perspective will say something else. We need cybersecurity for all the society, but following work will help identify the more impactful areas where you should prioritize your efforts. Typically, energy sector is one good example, because without energy or electricity, it's difficult to operate anything else. And then you will naturally work in a sectoral approach, and using the tools that we developed will certainly help optimize national cybersecurity, again, for more streamlined, optimized, and aligned outcomes. So here we just I just presented 3 potential use cases of the scientific base and the existing methodology, but we are also looking for partners from all sorts of sectors, business sector, academia, and government, and international organizations, and to work with, collaborate, and further identify refinements for the approach and the use cases. So, thank you very much. Here are the details and the websites for the organization that the Tel Aviv University established, the Cyber Resilience Lab, and I look forward to welcoming you here also next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lior, and thank you for taking us in that segue to where this sits with thinking about development and cyber capacity building. So before we move on to our next, what's going to be more of a panel discussion rather than a series of presentations, we have one more presentation. I'd like to invite Dr. Susana Cordero-Guerra to come and join us. She's the Manager of Institutions for the Development Sector of the Inter-American Development Bank. The floor is yours.
Something. Where's the oh, it's open.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. So good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. I wanted to thank the conference organizers and Melanie for having us here. It's really an honor to talk about this important topic in front of all of you. And I wanted to start with a personal story because I do wear the multilateral hat now, sitting in Washington, D.C., as a manager of the Institutions for Development sector at the IDB. But prior to that, I served in the government in Brazil for nearly 3 years as the head of the statistical office in the country. And a large country, the office, we were 12,000 people across 600 agencies spread across the 26 states in Brazil. So when Aviram opened the session today describing the layered challenges of building capacity in cybersecurity, I really identified with what he mentioned. You know, you have a federated challenge in some of these large countries in the developing world. The cascading effort of training the trainers sometimes often doesn't exist. The ability of having the SOC come in and create levers of accountability is also very weak and not present. The legal capacity to deal with some of these issues in purely regulated and institutional environments is a daily challenge. And underlying all of these features is the real dimension of trying to train the officers in the government that are serving the frontline citizens and building these systems while the crisis is happening. And so the frontline, you are a firefighter without sometimes having the tools, and that's where there's an invaluable role for multilateral agencies like the World Bank, the IDB, and others in the field, and this collaboration with academia, like the one presented here with Tel Aviv University, is extremely important and relevant for our work. So I'd like to congratulate the team and this partnership for the sectoral view and concept about how to approach this issue. It's extremely relevant to structure our engagements and to help us iterate, as Haggai mentioned, our approach in these different contexts. And so the role of this presentation is to bring a bit of a view of what we're doing in Latin America. The IDB focuses in the region. We're present across the 26 countries. And here, I'd like to say that we're not as much the knowledge bank, but we're the know-how bank. We're so embedded in the region and so embedded in the daily activities of these clients and our counterparts at the country level, where we extrapolate from the best knowledge out there, such as what we'll probably do with the strategy that was presented here today. And we're in real time implementing and helping the countries figure out how to solve very complex problems with a scarcity of resources. And so we have both a public, just briefly about the IDB in case some of you in the audience haven't heard about us, but we are a development bank working in Latin America across the 26 countries. We have a public and private arm. We work similarly to the World Bank with lending, technical assistance, and knowledge. These have a synergy in which the knowledge of today are the operations of tomorrow. We like to learn from what we do and then do what we learn. And we have as shareholders the countries the different counterparts in the developing and developed world. Israel is one of our shareholders, the government of Israel, and is a very important partner specifically in this theme through the INCD, and is very much present throughout our work in this sector. And as we move forward, I wanted to give you a sense of the department which I lead is the Institutions for Development Department. Of the $12 billion that we lend over a year to the 26 countries in Latin America, we're nearly half of that. And we operate in 3 main areas of focus. The first one is state capacity, so that underlines all of our activities. We help governments deliver better their functions, so the service delivery aspect in the backbone of government is at the core of what we do. We also focus on the fiscal aspect, help governments generate revenues more efficiently and spend those revenues more efficiently. And we're also at the nexus of the public and private sector. And here we're trying as much as possible to crowd in private sector investment into public sector functions that we can roll out and scale. And so moving on to the next slide and really zoning in our digital transformation agenda more broadly, we look at both the soft and hard components. I don't have to tell all of you here how important it is to have the hard infrastructure and the connectivity aspect of it, which is also in our department, but also think about, as Avram mentioned in the beginning, I thought it was, as a political scientist myself, I thought it was very interesting to start with the concept of decentralization and thinking about the federal, subnational levels and the difficulty of coordination among them. That coordination failure is at the heart of a lot of our work in capacity building. And for that, the regulatory environment is essential. Digital talent and skills is the backbone of everything we do. And we have the infrastructure as a way to complement all of the soft intelligence. So the region in cybersecurity, the gaps in digital transformation are shrinking, but cybersecurity is not accelerating, and the knowledge in cybersecurity is not accelerating at the same pace. And that creates the kinds of exorbitant numbers that we can see here. 137 billion cyber attacks, which represents 13% of the ransomware attacks worldwide, leading to almost more than nearly 50,000 distribution attempts. And a part of the reason for why we see these numbers, these stark numbers, is that the enabling conditions are not really there. 13 countries have a cybersecurity strategy developed. 9 of the countries have critical infrastructure protection plans. If we look at data protection laws, only 15 countries, and most countries do not have a cybersecurity agency, and CERT, nearly 11 countries do not have a CERT in the region and have a weak response capacity. And so, given this panorama of a weak governance and regulatory and institutional environment, having the sectoral lens that was presented here is extremely relevant. We've seen it very prominently in a lot of our work, and I'll go into that now in more depth. Again, the knowledge of today are the operations of tomorrow, and we have published extensively in the field in collaboration with Israel, and a lot of our publications are sectoral publications and have that emphasis on tailor-made strategies for a given sector, the last one being water. And specifically with the INCD, we've collaborated on several volumes of methodologies that have been translated to Spanish. So it's extremely relevant for our counterparts across Latin America. We also find that this more static approach in terms of having publications, and people learn in different ways, and there are complementary strategies for capacity building. So having the massive online open courses, the MOOCs, has been extremely relevant and has had great tractability with clients. So we have a fundamentals MOOCs. We also have a MOOC that, in the sectoral approach, focuses on the small and medium enterprises and focuses on the private sector challenges. And we also have developed self-assessment tools, like the ones analogous to the strategies described before, in which a client himself, any agency can assess their capabilities and their maturity levels. This could be tailored across different sectors. So again, the sector lens being extremely relevant in our daily operations. The tools have a multidisciplinary score mechanism that, according to different categories, that operates in the NIST framework. And downstream from this compliance assessment, we have a series of recommendations to improve countries' resilience according to each category. And as you all know, especially the academics who are in the room, having a network and sharing knowledge like Cyber Week is emblematic of the main event in this theme. We try to leverage these networks and the convening power of multilaterals through the HED Cyberlec, where we are mostly together with universities, 60 universities across 12 countries, and we have 23 full members. But the idea of this is a knowledge diffusion and exchange. And then here, I want to give you a quick flavor of our programs and operations. We're nearly at over 160 million in terms of lending across the 26 countries. You can see we are present across the region, both at the federal and oftentimes at the subnational level. Brazil is a good example of that. Through a program, we've reached different states in Brazil. Cyber is omnipresent across all of these projects, but these projects also, very importantly, as highlighted by my colleagues, have this sectoral approach. So projects in water, projects in citizen security, crime and deforestation, and in climate, the climate agenda, and its role and interchange with citizen security is very present here. And energy in Suriname and Paraguay, we've had a comprehensive digital agenda reform across more than 12 ministries in the country, and standalone projects as well, which I will go into now. In Uruguay, my time ended, so I will wrap up very quickly in 1 minute. And Uruguay is an example of one of our loans, and we have good data that we can share in terms of detection rates and capability efforts. But I wanted to end on a quick 60-second reflection on the future agenda, in terms that I think Avram's comments set the stage for us to have a higher level of ambition and really leverage this local knowledge that we all have developed in our experience in the developing world, and think about these transnational challenges that not only affect developing countries, but in terms of cybercrime, for example, is affecting the developing world, and evolving from core and periphery knowledge exchange, where there was a clear sequencing in terms of this knowledge transfer, where the developed world had the technology and then transferred to the developing world, is not possible anymore, because these global challenges affect everyone at the same time. And so thinking about capability strategies where this function evolution can be jointly organized with developed and developing world at the same time, at the same table, I think is a promising way that we have found in our experience, where we can build capability while solving complex problems. And I've seen this in Brazil and across our different projects. And the more that we can rely on strong partners such as the government of Israel, the more fortunate we are in the development space, and the better we can serve our clients. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. The one thing that we all find that we're working in this emerging digital economy space and capacity building is we're passionate about it and can't stop talking about it. So on that note, I would like to invite to the stage the members of our next panel. And for Cyber Week, we're actually going to have representatives from Sub-Saharan Africa come and speak about their experience. So I'd like to invite Major Gabata Gwaliba, who is the Director General of the National Cybersecurity Agency of Togo. I'd also like to invite Dr. Francesca Spidalieri, the Cybersecurity and Digital Development Consultant of the World Bank. I'll do the short one. Palikiem Asi, the head of Togo, but also of Cyber Defense Africa, which we'll hear of how it works about it. And of course, last but not least, one of Israel's own, Roy Yarom, head of cybersecurity policy at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So, thank you all for joining me today. And we've had a really interesting introduction of thinking about cyber capacity building and where that sits, both with the sectoral approach. And I'd like to turn to you, Major Gwaliba, to sort of take us through a little bit of what you find that sort of resonates with you, that's important, and the challenges and the successes to those challenges you found in Togo.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this afternoon. I would like to apologize for my English. As you know, we are coming from a French-speaking country, and I will try to be more clear so that you can hear me. Thank you, Melanie, for your question. First of all, I would like to make a scheme so that you can hear. We are coming from a developing country, but in the cyberspace, Togo is facing the same threats and risk like US, who is a very big and developed country, or like Germany, or like Israel. And so we don't have the same capacities to face these threats, so that we have to reflect or to think a little bit different in order to manage and mitigate the risk you are facing. And then in our country, as you are telling, in 2018, our authorities decided to set up the ecosystem of cybersecurity, and we started with a law, which is the law on the cybersecurity and cybercrime fighting, and this law obliged the state to set up the agency, a national cybersecurity agency, which at the head of which I'm today. And one of our aim at the head of this agency is to build certain capacities of our country, also smallest as is it, and with little bit less financial capacities, but to see the ecosystem of our country dealing with the education, dealing with the critical infrastructure we have, dealing with the cybercrime we face in Africa, because there's some different type of cybercrime we face in our country than yours. And then on this strategic aspect, we build a certain ecosystem which in our country is very innovative, which is built on a PPP, public-private partnership. And you have Mr. Palakiem Asi, he will introduce himself. He is the CTO of the technical arm of my agency, which is Cyber Defense Africa. It is on this we started to build, and now the capacity building in our country in cybersecurity is that we Togolese, we are able to know what we want, what's the vision we want to give to our country, and with certain partners like Israel, like our country used to work a lot with your country, like France, like Germany, like regional organization, so that we can build something efficient in cybersecurity. It's what I can say now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go over to Francesca for a moment and say you've had an enormous amount of experience of looking at working with the World Bank or working with organizations of overlooking what the tools are needed as part of cyber capacity building and where the sectoral approach sits in that, and particularly tools for critical national infrastructure increasingly. Can you share with us a little about your opinion about what you've seen on the ground and where this all fits in together? Join up the dots for us a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Melanie. Well, I'll try to maintain the time that you assigned to all of us. I think I wear multiple hats here, so both working with the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise and with the World Bank, with developing a large database of tools and available methodologies and frameworks for critical infrastructure protection. But I think that the key here on the sectoral approach is that while there is a wide recognition, clearly from small countries and large countries, that this rapid digital transformation and this increased interconnectivity and interdependence of sector has exposed us all to increased cybersecurity risk and vulnerabilities, and we all agree that we need better frameworks and methodology for critical infrastructure protection. What we find that was lacking in the wider cybersecurity ecosystem of methodology framework was a sectoral approach, but truly sectoral. Not like you're an organization in the healthcare sector, so here's your tool because you're in the healthcare sector, but a perspective from a holistic standpoint where you're really looking at the entire sector as a whole system instead of individual components, which are the individual operators or just the supervisory authority. So having a sectoral perspective to capacity building and to critical infrastructure protections, in our opinion and our experience in the pilots, has allowed us to better communicate to national leaders and relevant stakeholders that want to better understand the cybersecurity landscape at the national level and sectoral level, where some of their common challenges, needs, and priorities. And once that analysis and assessment is conducted in a very thorough, repeatable, objective way, then be presented with a roadmap of improvements. What are some of the priorities, how to prioritize certain recommendations. Some are more technical, some are obviously more strategic, more operational. So we found that to be very unique. Obviously, the sectoral approach built on existing methodologies and frameworks at the national level and at the organizational level. So in a way, it brings together the best of both worlds, but can be at the same time adapted depending on the sectors, the country, the size, the specific needs, the resources of the country, and has been so far a very effective tool to communicate to national leaders and sectoral leaders who are not cybersecurity experts. They don't necessarily understand the ones in the zeros and the specific threats, but they do understand the price that their economy is paying, that what it means for their sector to not be operational, to be unable to deliver a service. So again, invite all to look at the approach, continue to contribute. There's many opportunities for engagements, both with other organizations and companies. And the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise will also have the methodology on their Silver portal, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. It's the largest database of cyber capacity building tools, projects, and initiatives. So this will certainly be another of the tools.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll have time to come back to the GFC in a minute. But I'd like to turn to Palikiamasi. Welcome. And thinking about you deliver the technical arm of the cybersecurity work in Togo as a true public-private partnership. So love if you could share with us a little bit more of how that helps operate for as a sort of unique way to increase cyber capacity building. And also, some of you may or may not know that last year an agreement was signed in Togo to bring about the future Africa Cybersecurity Research Center, which aims to be a regional initiative to increase cybersecurity, and maybe perhaps thinking about what that will do for cyber capacity building, not just for Togo, but in really enacting what we always say, that cybersecurity is a team sport.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Perfect, was better now. Thank you. Basically, for us, we were trying to find how we can do more with less, right? How we can, with less human resources, with less financial resources, with less technologies, how we can achieve the same results because we're facing the same threats. How can we do that? And that was key in our reflections, right? And by thinking of that, we focused on how we can share the services. We decided in Togo that cybersecurity is a service. It's going to be a service that will deliver to citizens. It's a service that will deliver to critical infrastructures. It's a service that will deliver to public administrations. So it's a service. So basically, we decided to create a managed service company. So by creating one single company, that single company will buy the technologies, they will train the people, right? And they will create the processes, and they will be in charge of securing the critical infrastructures, the citizens, and the public administrations. So suddenly, we don't need to train thousands of experts in Togo, but we limit it to the number of experts inside this company. We don't need to buy thousands of different technologies. We just buy it once, and we deliver it to everybody, as a service. We create one process, and this process, we deliver it to everybody, obviously tailored to every need, and we propose it to all the companies. So with less, we're doing more, and we're doing it quicker, right? Because it's difficult to convince 1,000 people to hire the personnel, buy the technologies, and do this and do that. But once that one single company has the mandate to do it, it's much more quicker. So that's how we try to tackle the challenges that we have in Togo. But once that we've done that, okay, we have a national CSIRT, it's doing its job, it's scanning the networks and so on, and finding the vulnerabilities and letting the people know and helping them fixing it, etc., etc. And we realized that most of the threats, they don't actually come from Togo. They come from other countries, developed countries, countries from the region, etc., etc. Our relations with developed countries is, let's say, more common because it's organized. They have CSIRTs, you can contact them and have the contacts. But in Africa, we realize that most of the countries, they're not organized yet. They don't have the right contacts. If you have an incident coming from whatever country, you don't know who to call, you don't know how to organize it, how do you get the help? So we decided to create an African cybersecurity coordination and research center that we want to host in Togo to coordinate cyber incidents. What we found out was that sometimes some countries, they even have CSIRTs, but the right people, the people who have the know-how, the knowledge, they're not sitting on the CSIRT. They're sitting at the telco regulator office or somehow. So we need that coordination center to know exactly who to call in every country when we have an incident so that we can coordinate, so that we can share information, so that we can build capacity as well. And yeah, basically that's the idea of the center. We're trying to find out how we can do more with less, basically.
Thank you.
I have something to add. And this center, it was decided during a summit that Togo held last year. It was a head of state summit, and we were able to sign for 29 countries, African. Then they accept to create this center with the headquarters in Togo. It is a political decision at the level of African Union with the UNECA. You see, the United Nations for Africa Financial and Economic Service.
Thank you. So, Roy, waiting so patiently there. From your role in cybersecurity policy at the EBRD and thinking towards the sort of different tools you have, the different ways that you can support capacity building, particularly for critical national infrastructure. What are the approaches that you're taking at the moment to support countries in these endeavors?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very special day for me too, seeing this methodology reaches this milestone. As in my previous role in the INCD, I was kind of like the matchmaker, the sponsor, right? So a lot of water went through the stream, and it's congratulations to you all on bringing it to this meaningful conclusion or median point. The EBRD is a private sector-focused IFI. We are working in Eastern Europe, in Northern Africa, Central Asia, Caucasus, and our goal is, of course, we are a factory floor. We are more close to the factory floor IFI. We invest in the companies themselves, private companies in concrete digital transformation or creation of new infrastructure. We support railway operators to extend the rails, to improve their signaling system. We invest in ICT companies to increase broadband accessibility, etc. We do this to achieve strategic goals, but of course, it all has to have a financially viable model. So cyber risk for us is a very concrete issue. It is not only a risk to our strategic goals, promoting these economies to be more competitive and resilient. It is also a very concrete risk to our transactions. We don't want to invest in a railway operator after which the rail will derail, the train will derail because of a cyber attack. This cannot happen. So one of our, I will divide our efforts into two. One, as Hagai mentioned, the bookshelf is quite full in organizational cybersecurity standards. That is not our problem. What is our problem is making sure we can streamline this corpus of knowledge and best practices into the way the bank operates. This has two challenges. One, we don't want to create assessment fatigue and diagnostic fatigue, and these things cannot cost more energy than the value that they give. And this is very tricky. You have to take a very humble approach in the way you streamline it, and this is why we are trying to develop a very thin but robust toolkit for bankers to diagnose their transactions and comprehend the mitigation strategy. Secondly, the diagnostic cannot end with a red light, okay? We will do business in these countries, we will invest. The question is, and these clients sometimes don't have the resources or the expertise, a lot of them critical infrastructure operators, of course. We want to make sure that they have the resources accessible to mitigate the risk and for the transaction to go forward. For that end, we will soon, in Q4 this year, hopefully, launch a multi-donor-backed initiative to increase the resilience in cybersecurity of our critical infrastructure operators, starting in Ukraine and war-affected countries, which is a major focal point of EBRD working today. And so we will support them, we will help them understand the risk and make their first substantial, concrete steps to mitigate it. I will end with the way I see our connection to the sectoral methodology. We understand that entities are not islands, okay? Our critical infrastructure operators need to collaborate and share information with their peers. They need a strong regulator who knows what he's doing, who gives them guidance and assistance. They need a strong cybersecurity offering sector alongside them. The long-term guarantee to the resilience of a country is the capacities in its cybersecurity sector to support. I mean, otherwise you have nothing. So the EBRD has all the mechanisms to hold dialogue with regulators and invest in the high-tech sector to create these holistic, resilient ecosystems. The methodology now being developed sounds to me like a great addition to our toolbox when we set about to accomplish these missions. And yeah, looking forward to testing it and trying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Francesca, I want to come back to you very quickly. I've got time for another quick round of questions for everybody, but I want to ask you, and this sort of panel evolved a little bit from last year, but thinking about this question of how we embed sort of cybersecurity as part of development, and sort of for a long time it's been seen sort of cybersecurity and development and cybersecurity, whereas development without cybersecurity is just creating a bigger threat surface for people to deal with. Can you tell us a little bit about the work of the GFC and in collaboration with the World Bank that's working to try and address this?
Yes, thank you. So, yes, this was like the main topic of last year's conversation, but since then, the conversation has continued to expand. And so both the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise and the World Bank, I would say, have been at the forefront of this argument where digital transformation and cybersecurity are two sides of the same coin, and they're key enablers of inclusive and sustainable and resilient economic development, sustainable development. And this needs to be part of an integral component of the international development agenda, not a standalone siloed activities that needs to be funded on its own. And as part of this conversation and dialogues with beneficiary countries and with partner organizations, this has led to the planning of the first of its kind conference on cyber capacity building, specific on cyber resilience for development, with the overarching goal of integrating cyber resilience, cyber capacity building as part of the international development agenda. So we've had papers published, we've had many events where we talk about it, but in November, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and the Cyber Peace Institute, as four organizer co-partners, are organizing this first of its kind conference, where we are bringing for the first time both a representative of the development community together with representative of the cyber capacity building community to address together common objectives that they often are trying to achieve in silos. And for the first time, talking about it together. It's not just to admire the problem and continue to talk about why it should be part of the international development agenda, but to talk about solution, to talk about how we develop that future global agenda that includes cyber resilience as a cross-cutting priority for development, that expand the pool of resources, financial and otherwise, available to developing countries to improve their cyber resilience. How to build capacity together, how to avoid overlapping of efforts and better coordinate and cooperate. So all of this information are available online. I'm available later for more information. But there's a lot has happened since last year when we were just at the incipient stage of this discussion, and now it's very concrete efforts that are culminating in this conference at the end of the year.
Yeah, so anyone interested to speak to Francesca, because I believe it's invitation only to Accra. So I want to turn back to you, Major Gwaliba, and to Palakia perhaps together. So thinking of, you were talking about this more for less, sort of what would be, from your opinion, from being on the ground for Togo and for your neighboring countries, the kind of, you know, the most significant change that you could see, or the most significant need within cyber capacity building that you think would allow you to deliver that?
As you can see, the cybersecurity matter is new in our country. I can see that is a little bit from 2015, everything seriously started. But in your countries, I think in 19th. And our challenge now is to make the mindset change with the digitalization, as you are talking about, because in few years everything will be on digital. We are now digitalizing the services in my country. A lot of service now is online, but in our culture we still thinking that there's no security matter because it's not tangible, it's not physical. But as we are authorities on cybersecurity, we are dealing with this matter, and we are making a lot of communication, a lot of awareness, sensibilization, and everything for the deciders, or for the how you call it, the décideurs, the wish at the ministries. We are working a lot with the ministries in my country. every ministry, every month we have a meeting with the key deciders or the key technical personnel of this ministry on cybersecurity rules. We are editing everything they have to be conform, everything. And I think the main challenge is the mindset change for me. If everybody changes mindset to have the culture of cybersecurity, I think we will gain the battle as we talk in military aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we need to collaborate more in order to cope with the challenge. Collaboration also means mutualization. I mean that we, obviously, once again, from our perspective, we cannot do the same things as you guys did. And when I say you guys, I mean Israel, Europe, or US, or whatever. Because if we do the same thing, it will take us the same time to arrive to your level, right? If we do the exact same thing as you, if it took you 15 years, so we will get there in 15 years, right? We don't have 15 years in front of us. The threats are here now. So we need to find new ways to get there where you guys are now, right? And we cannot, so there is no existing solution that we can implement and hope to be, you know, to be efficient. So we need to mutualize more. From my perspective, it's not possible to have a training center in Ghana and the same in Togo and the same in Benin, because we don't have enough money to build 3 centers. We should mutualize and maybe put the money together and build one big center that is, you know, for the next generations, the best center that we've seen in the world. But we do it once and we share it, right? We do it once, I mean, build it once and share it. So we can put the money together, do it, and just, you know, it for everybody. That's a little bit the idea behind the center, having one center, delivering the service to everybody. Now we can decide. The center in Togo may not be able to do everything. Then we would have another center somewhere else that will specialize in something. But we make sure that we build the best ever center that exists in the world that would, you know, build the capacity for the whole continent or the whole region, basically. That's what I could share.
Yes, I have another aspect. We have a chance in Africa that when you see the demographic statistic, our population is very young. And as you know, young people are very useful on digital services and internet and etc. We have to focus our strategy on the youth of our countries. It's the reason in my country with my technical arm CDA, we work a lot with young people. Last week we launched a very big national CTF, capture the flag, to detect the talents. And with this talent, with the social media, we can rapidly and very quickly attend a lot of people in our country. And in our country also, we have internet by the phones. It's not like in here, in your house, you have internet. But in our country, a lot of people use internet by the phone. And with the social media, it's very easier to end these people with the awareness on cybersecurity, how to avoid threats, to risks, and etc. We have to focus, if we want to succeed, very quickly, as he was saying, to change the mindset once and to focus on the young people.
The only country where parents are telling their children to spend more time on the phone for cyber awareness. And so just to wrap us up on one leg, there's a really interesting comment there about sort of bridging 15 years, but not in that time. And from your role of having been part of that 15 years development, or let's into the development community right now, what would you say the one concrete thing that would be the real lever of change in the countries that you're working with and more widely?
Great question. I'll try and be original in the answer, because I don't want to say the obvious things. I think that a key to cybersecurity has no ROI. It's very hard to show. I think it's a challenge that we all share. In the end, this is why investments continue to be low. It's under prioritized, etc. We need to be much better in creating and understanding models in which cybersecurity can be coupled with growth, with financial efficiency, with automation. For example, moving to a safe cloud to achieve both much less cost of operating your business, better security, and less manpower you need to operate things. We need to not to chase the holy grail of let's try to quantify the ROI of cybersecurity, because we won't succeed. Too many have tried already. Finding models in which you can come to your client and tell him, look, invest in this. Let us help you, for example, to have to use cybersecurity as a competitive edge if you're a telecommunication operator. Use cybersecurity to get more revenue. Developing the models which will deliver better security alongside tangible efficiency, competitiveness values, growth values. I think this is key to accelerate the uptake of cybersecurity best practices in our countries of operations, for sure. And to me, this is a primary challenge in leapfrogging our practice forward.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so sorry we have to bring this conversation to an end, because I know we could keep going, but I think that's the perfect segue into the next panel, and I'm going to cede my very comfortable position here to Einan Lichtman, who's going to moderate the next panel on really thinking about actually where we actualize all the talk on public-private partnerships, or where can actually the private sector help to this. But before we do that, I would like you to all show your appreciation and mine for the fantastic panel we've had here today.
I'll take our name tags.
Model of sectorial levels. I'm honored of my two colleagues. Sunil is CISO of the head of engineering of research of Jupiter One. He was nominated as one of the most one of the people that has the most awards and the most challenging position and changing the world of cybersecurity since 2020. This was 2020, 2021 and more, and Kobe is co-founder of Iskana. When we are talking of protection, and we was hearing a lot of protection of cybersecurity and sectorial level, we have a problem in the cybersecurity arena. When we are managing the current threat, we are dealing the yesterday threat. The current threat on cybersecurity is really the tomorrow threat. It's not the yesterday threat. You said it took us 15 years to get where we are, but we didn't finish the problem. We are still working, and we will still working on this problem. So the real challenge on cybersecurity is not dealing with the past, but dealing with the future. But to be ready for the emerging threats, and not to the threats we passed over. In order to be ready to these threats, we are talking about protection, or we are talking about maturity. Maturity is not what you have today. Maturity is what you have today in order to be ready for the tomorrow in a better way. It's about human capacity, it's about processes, it's about organization, but it's also about tools, the right tools. When we are talking about a protection model, when we are talking about sectorial, we are dealing with tomorrow challenges in order to be better with them. Sunil, I know you have a new mechanism, a new technique, new ideas of challenges and how to deal with the challenges. I hope you can share with us a bit.
Sure, happy to do so. So some background is that I used to be the chief security scientist at Bank of America. And in that capacity, one of the roles that I had was to anticipate new and emerging threats. Now, I understand that many organizations don't have a lot of money. Well, Bank of America, the CEO of Bank of America at the World Economic Forum told everyone that we have an unlimited budget for security. Okay? Now, I deal with a lot of startups, so you can imagine what happened very shortly after that. But I want to set that basis to help you understand that even with an unlimited budget, it would not make sense for us to take the same approaches and buy a bunch of tools and try to secure everything. And so we needed a completely different type of approach. And so again, understanding that not everyone is as well-resourced as Bank of America, the approach that we took didn't require us to have to spend unlimited budget. We did actually have a large budget. It was about $1 billion for security. So it's a lot, but that's it. The new approach that we came up with is based on a really simple premise. And so let's think about this for a moment. We're talking about capacity building, okay? And specifically critical infrastructure. So two questions I would ask is, what makes something critical? Okay, what is it that makes something critical to begin with? And what is it that is causing us to have less than adequate capacity? So first, let's think about what is critical. What makes something critical? What are the attributes of something that makes something critical? And what we discovered is actually quite something the opposite, which is what makes something not critical. Maybe the opposite of that would be true. So we said, okay, what are the attributes of a system that makes it less impactful, less valuable, such that if that asset went away, we would not care? And those attributes we distilled into 3 core principles. And those 3 core principles are distributed, immutable, ephemeral. So distributed, immutable, ephemeral, or DIE. Okay? So the DIE triad is what we came up with as a way to think about how we design systems and resources and applications and everything to be as low value as possible. Subsequently, we then said, well, if it's not distributed, if it's not immutable, if it's not ephemeral, and ephemeral, by the way, means how long it's lived, okay? If it's not distributed, not immutable, not ephemeral, then it tends to be very critical, okay? Now, I'll give you another example just so you can think about the principle here. Let's use the ephemerality for a moment, okay? Ephemerality is how long-lived something is. Consider the cells in your body. What cells in your body are long-lived? Things like your brain, right? What cells in your body are short to live? Things like your skin. Which cells are heavily protected and which cells are insecure? Actually, not even insecure. They don't even need security at all. So now think about this again from the standpoint of capacity building. What if I had to secure every part of my body, my skin cells, that I don't really care if it falls off and DIEs? I would have to have lots of capacity. I would have to spend a lot of money. I would need an Iron Man suit. And I'm pretty sure a real Iron Man suit would cost more than $1 billion. Is that what we need? And I would argue the answer is no. So what are we building towards? Are we designing things to be more critical? Are we causing things to become more critical and that's why we end up needing more capacity? Or should we design differently so that we have systems that are DIE, distributed, immutable, ephemeral? And in doing so, we end up not requiring as much capacity as we did before. So my job is CISO, okay, at a company called Jupiter One. But that job as a CISO is largely what I would call being a cyber veterinarian. Cyber veterinarian. In other words, there's pets that I have to take care of. Pets are very long-lived. They're not DIE. I don't want them to DIE. But my goal is to have as few pets as possible. So how do I ensure that? And the way I ensure that is by taking on a different job, which is to be a pet control officer. I limit the number of pets that the organization adopts. I limit that which may become critical by saying, do we really want this system to become critical? And oftentimes the answer is, no, we don't need that to be critical. We don't need that to become another legacy system. And so what do? Well, we get rid of it before it becomes another critical system. And what's actually pretty remarkable about that is that in the end, what happens is it increases business agility. And that is something that we all want, and it's highly aligned. And so that is at least the approach that we took at Bank of America.
Thank you very much, Sunil. Do you have any thoughts? How can you do it in a sectorial level, not in organizational level?
Sure. So the principles of DIE apply pretty widely. So think about, and we'll apply this to other types of infrastructure. Nuclear power plants versus localized solar. Which one is more DIE? It's not to say that you won't have a nuclear power plant or a large power plant, but if you want something to be more resilient, if you want to have, not have to secure everything, then design systems to be more disposable, more smaller, more destructible. You don't really care if it goes away. Here's another example. Air Force pilots versus drones. Which one is more sustainable in the long run, right? We still want pilots, but we probably want more drones than we want pilots. And you can apply that for electrical system, for water, for the various parts of our ecosystem. And we have to think creatively around what that looks like for your respective environment. But that is the model that seems to work pretty well. And biological systems demonstrate that's the case.
Very, very interesting. Thank you. Kobe, you are Riskana. Kobe is the co-founder of Riskana. Riskana is one of the famous Israeli open OSINT security posture. Yeah. And Kobe is analyzing Israeli and non-Israeli companies, but also analyzing sectors in the Israeli sector and outside. Sector is the meaning of combining some, as Guy said, combining some companies into one entity, to look into them. Kobe, can you please elaborate a bit about your work about in sectors, and what is the secret sauce in order to be better tomorrow in the sector of the organizations?
Thank you. So I'm a big believer in can you hear me?
Yeah,
Now better. So thank you very much. I'm a big believer in measuring cyber risk. I believe that when you do it continuously, you improve yourself and you get better and better every time. But I think when you collaborate on a sector level, when you're benchmarking yourself, when you work together, collaborate with other companies in the same sector, you improve not only yourself much better, but also you improve the entire sector. Everybody goes up. So it's very important to do a specific risk assessment on yourself all the time, continuously, but very important also to measure and have projects on a sector level in order to understand the full picture of the sector, benchmarking, and the company itself.
Thank you very much.
So I'm a big advocate for quantifying risk, and there's a methodology called FAIR, F-A-I-R, if you're not familiar with that, that helps you quantify risk. FAIR is actually, I'm on the board of FAIR too, so I'm an advocate for it, but I will tell you it's extremely hard to do because it's very effortful for us to figure out what these numbers are. What I have, and what I've done at Bank of America with the DIE triad is that the DIE triad is actually very measurable. The specific point of the specific measurement that is actually easy to obtain is the loss magnitude, or how much does this asset worth. I cannot predict the threats, and I cannot predict the vulnerabilities, any new vulnerabilities that might emerge. But what is within my control is the value of the asset. And it turns out that when it comes to measuring risk, the one thing that we've struggled with for a while is that impact. Like, what's the actual impact? What's the value of this asset? And because DIE ends up being a useful measure for understanding what is or isn't valuable, it actually also provides a mechanism for calculating risk really easily as well. So it's turned out to be pretty useful in many ways. And the perspective overall is again, the less DIE something is, the more valuable it becomes. So those things that have value, we better be protecting those. If you're not, then it creates challenges for critical infrastructures like financial services and power and so on.
If I may, a little bit. So I totally agree with you. I think you are totally right. And this is why we are trying to do it at this point manually, but in the last months, we all got exposed to the AI capabilities. And my question to you, do you think that AI will help us maybe to do it automatically, to understand the asset value for each company, or still we'll have to do it manually in order to?
So if you're building out new capabilities, I would not bank them on artificial intelligence at this point. I'm not too concerned about artificial intelligence. I'm more concerned about natural stupidity. There's more of that. There's more dangers from natural stupidity than there is from artificial intelligence. But that said, the calculation of value can be done very, very deterministically. So I wouldn't necessarily rely at this point on things like some of these newfangled technologies to help us do that at this point. As I mentioned, the DIE triad actually helps us measure value really easily. And one of the simplest values is time. And I used the time example earlier. It's very easy to measure how long-lived something is. And that becomes a proxy for value.
Thank you. You all agree that one of the changes we are passing is from single point of IT, single point of systems, to multiple. By the DIE systems, we are moving from central systems, central IT systems, central CISO, to multi-level CISOs, to multi-organization and multi-assets. And also from a COVID perspective, when we are moving to the cloud and we are using outside systems, we are moving from central CISO, central IT, to decentralized. The servers are out there. Everyone can put in some shadow IT or some system out there and be very helpful for the organization, but bring a lot of risk, a lot of threats to the organization together. In order to be more resilient tomorrow to these threats, this is the main sector in the organization. All the organization is together bringing up some capacity, but it builds the shadow IT, the little ITs bring up many sectors in the organization. The DIE perspective is to encourage it as a way to bring it better. The Riskana perspective in order, either Riskana have any tool that can help us to mitigate or to understand how the organization is look alike in order to build up the better security of the organization.
Yes, so this Riskana does it in 2 ways or 3 ways. The first way, and I think it's very important related to your question, is to be able to discover. As you said, we have multiple cloud, multiple assets all over the places, and using technologies such as OSINT, open source intelligence, or other technologies in order to be able, first of all, to get a full picture of how an organization looks from outside. Of course, even better if you can also see it from inside, but at least to be able to get a full picture and a clear picture of how your company asset management looks from outside. Once you get the picture of all your asset discovery, I think the next step is to understand what kind of risk exists on these assets, such as vulnerabilities, data leaks, and so on, public, buckets, and so on, and so on. And the third part, I know that you maybe a little bit less like it, but the AI new buzz is to get insights, trying to get insights about the model that you mentioned or any other model that your company worked with, and to understand what will be the mitigation plan and how you can improve the cyber posture of your company. But again, in order to do it better, I think the collaboration, doing it on the sector level, understanding a connection between companies. We talk a lot about supply chain. Supply chain is not just vendors, it's contractors, subcontractors, vendors, companies as part of our business continuity, and so on. All this together, when you do a full discovery of all the connections and all the problems, sometimes you might understand that a vulnerability in one company may affect all the chain, and therefore I think it's very critical to do it on sector level and not only, again, very important to do it on the company itself, but on the entire sector in order to get a full picture and better protect the company on the sector.
Thank you very much. Guys, questions? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Inan, thank you, Sunil, thank you, Kobe, for a really interesting panel of thinking about how we then take this and close the gap, or where countries can find additional partners in their journey when they're looking at cyber capacity development. I want to thank you, all the diehards that have made it through to the end of the day of the Louis session. Thank you to our panel, and look forward to next year and see what we do next when we think about scaling up cyber capacity building and what that might bring. So thank you very much, and have a great end of the evening and day tomorrow if you're here tomorrow, and safe travels back to wherever you might be going. Thank you.